year is 2002, and the superhero movie is rarely on the big screen these days, with many kids still watching the X-Men and Spiderman cartoons on Saturday morning TV. In fact, the only superhero movies that are on the big screen these days are aimed at adults, with the R-rated Blade movies or the now 2-year-old X-Men movies. In reality, there was nothing really that appealed to the inner child and relived the memories of these cartoons. Yet in 2002, Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst worked with Sam Raimi to bring to the big screen Spider-Man, which proved to be a big success in terms of the box office. Sam Raimi's take on Spider-Man showed the studio bosses that these types of movies could be moneymakers and launched into the mainstream the big comic book movie of the summer, let alone the game known as Spot the Stan Lee cameo. Fast forward now 10 years and we now have a reboot, much to the splitting of many people. On one side, you have the comic book fans who are still trying to get the bad taste of Spider-Man 3 out their mouth, and those who say, well, it's way too soon to be rebooting a franchise of a movie. Now titled The Amazing Spider-Man, to avoid confusion with the original, it is directed by acclaimed music video director Marc Webb, whose last movie outing was the critically loved 500 Days of Summer, and with him he brings in Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker, stroke Spider-Man, Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy, Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben, and Sally Field as Aunt May. On the villain side of things, the writing team, James Vanderbilt, Alvin Sargent, and Steve Kloves, learned the lessons of the previous movies and opt for a villain who is able to challenge Spider-Man on both a mental and physical sense in the form of the Lizard, aka Dr. Kirk Connors, as played by Rhys Ifans. Story-wise, there's nothing really we haven't heard before. This is the tale of Peter Parker, who's bitten by a genetically engineered spider, who then goes on the tale of discovery about his powers and fights a villain along the way, and he gets to go blah blah blah. You've heard it all before. However, not all is the same this time around, as here we get the origin of Peter's parents, and just where he got that big old brain of his. Just don't expect anything too groundbreaking here, they're not really in the movie that much. In addition to this, there are maybe a few tweaks to the origin tale, such as, spoiler, how Uncle Ben dies. Further to this, there's no Mary Jane Watson. Or is there? The eagle-eyed and conspiracy theorists amongst the internet may tell you otherwise. But there is Gwen Stacy as the love interest for Peter Parker in this movie. In the easiest terms, this is a different version of the first movie. But the question is really, is there enough to make this reboot justifiable? Sort of. As the opening sequence with Andrew Garfield begins to roll, the movie feels like slipping back into an old pair of comfy shoes. Everything feels familiar and comfortable. Garfield really makes the role of Peter Parker his own, and makes you forget about the other movies. He looks and acts like Peter Parker, and when he dons the suit, he does the same as Spider-Man. Around him, he's supported by some great performances, with Emma Stone giving as good as she gets, while the human force of Rhys Ifans doesn't fall over too much acting-wise. But great performances on screen can't distract away from the issues that this movie has. For starts, the story. Yes, it's nice to have something different, but the story takes too long to get going, and when it does, it moves into what you think is a great Spider-Man 2 area, with a villain that the audience can sympathise with. However, this is not the case, and we end up with a Spider-Man 3 villain, someone who we know we're meant to feel for, but just don't feel anything for them. I guess this is where the Alvin Sargent influence comes in, as he worked on both Spider-Man 2 and 3, and he makes the movie just feel a little flat in the villain department. However, not all is lost here, as there is a tease throughout the movie of Norman Osborn, who remains faceless, but we know is dying and is using his company resources to help search for a cure, which is clearly laying down the path for future movies. Couple the failings with the villain, with the fact that the story appears to lose itself for a good 20 minutes, the pacing begins to wobble just over about halfway through the film, and as the final act looms, the sudden nonsensical Saturday morning cartoon villain, I want to change the world plot suddenly comes into play, making the previous build-up a bit of a waste. Beyond the story issues, there's an over-reliance on CGI here, for stunt work and interaction with the Lizard. Other Marvel movies have shown us that it is possible to have a physical presence on set, and this does happen with the Spider-Man suit, but the Lizard just looks particularly fake, especially in 3D. Overlook the flaws and the slightly drawn-outness of points, and this is an enjoyable 2.25 hour ride, which still leaves a pleasant taste in your mouth at the end of the movie. This isn't really the movie that Sam Raimi's Spider-Man was, nor is it Batman Begins. It's a good, middle-of-the-road Marvel movie, which has learned the lessons of other superhero movies and looks to set up for further movies down the line, much like other movies set within the Marvel Universe. For fans of the original, there is certainly enough to make you happy. There are still lessons to be learned from this movie, but I still think the writers need to read some of the comics and learn that with great power comes great responsibility. Thanks for watching. Please remember to leave a comment below, share the video, and feedback your ideas for future shows to me over Twitter, @Dr Dogbert. Oh, and one more thing. Stay after the credits, and like other Marvel movies, there's a tease for the next movie. Just be aware that the person in the room may not be who you're thinking of.